Hello, I'm Morgan Peckma, Editor-in-Chief of City and State, and this is Last Look. Today we are at the office of Attorney General Eric Schneiderman to talk about his record $13 billion settlement with JP Morgan Chase. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here, Morgan.
Should the public view this settlement with JP Morgan as a punishment of the bank or recompense to the owners who were treated unfairly?
A little bit of both. I mean, in the statement of facts, JP Morgan acknowledged essentially putting bad mortgages into its mortgage-backed securities that they knew in some cases were bad. It took responsibility for its actions, which I think was appropriate, but the deal is, the best quality of the deal is the huge volume of relief it's providing to Americans, but particularly New Yorkers. To the extent this is a good deal for America, this is a great deal for New York. We got over $1 billion in cash and other relief. There are special provisions in the relief to be provided in addition to writing down lots of New Yorkers' mortgages and giving them rate adjustments. Chase is going to get credit for donating abandoned properties to land banks, which is something that in the last year I've started to fund land banks all over the state with the proceeds of an earlier settlement. These are great vehicles for governments to buy up abandoned properties, because you've heard of the phenomenon of zombie mortgages. There are these abandoned properties all over New York State that bring down the property values of their entire street or their neighborhood. They are havens for crime, and they are undermining property values. So it's very important for local governments to be able to not just help the individual homeowners, but to help the whole community rise up again. This is going to give us enough money to really boost the housing market in New York, and once the housing prices start to go up, that lifts all boats.
Does this settlement mark the end of the road of your office's inquiry into JP Morgan?
On this particular issue relating to the pooling and marketing of mortgage-backed securities, sure. That doesn't foreclose us, obviously, on issues going forward.
But this settlement doesn't release any individuals or institutions from further prosecution?
Or from criminal liability. There is no criminal release in this settlement. This settles only civil claims, yes.
A lot of the criticism of the government's handling of Wall Street, particularly from the left, has centered around the paucity of criminal charges brought against the perpetrators of these mortgage frauds. Do you feel pressure to put someone from Wall Street behind bars?
I know a lot of people aren't going to be satisfied if that doesn't happen, and I can understand the sentiment that if you commit a big enough crime, you're allowed to get away with it. It's tough. When I came into office and started to investigate this area, a lot of time had already gone by, and our statute of limitations is much shorter than the federal government has. So the federal government is continuing to pursue the possibility of criminal charges, but I can't really argue with the sentiment that it seems that there really was a missed opportunity here to set a tougher standard for folks who knowingly violated the law. Again, the overwhelming majority of people in financial services, and JP Morgan Chase is a fine institution, are just there to make money for themselves and their clients. There's a relatively small number who go way beyond the rules, and they should be held accountable. But I think this settlement and the settlements that should come really reflect the fact that the working group that the President set up, that I co-chair, that the President set up in 2012 during the State of the Union address, has started to deliver results on actually digging into what caused the crash in the housing market, the crash in the mortgage-backed securities market that brought America to its knees and created the recession from which we're still recovering. So this is accountability. I can understand the point of view of some folks who think it's not quite enough, but this is a big deal. And it's also, most importantly, going to help the folks who are hurt the most.
So does that mean that we shouldn't expect criminal charges, any additional criminal charges to come out of your office in regard to the wrongdoing on Wall Street?
On JP Morgan Chase, certainly the statute is run, but there is, it has been acknowledged publicly, there is a federal criminal investigation underway.
Part of the money from the settlement will go to relief for Superstorm Sandy victims. How does what happened with mortgage-backed securities relate to Sandy?
Well, there are a lot of folks who were hit with this double whammy. They had problems with their mortgages. They were underwater, which means their homes were worth less than the mortgages or close to being underwater. And when people are in a situation like that, it's bad for them, but it's also bad for the state and the community and everything, because they're not out spending money. Every dollar they have is going to try and keep their home. There are a lot of folks who are suffering in that situation already, and then the storm hit. So it's really, compounding the problems of just keeping current with your mortgage. So we did manage to get into the deal essentially a discount on any of the other relief provided, any refinancing or loan from Chase to anyone in a FEMA-impacted area from October 2012 to today. So that'll provide an additional discount to Sandy victims and victims of other disasters during that time period. But I think it's very important. It was something we pushed for, something we wanted, because if you go out and look out in Rockaway and Coney Island and Long Beach, there's still a lot of folks who are hurting and need everything they can get to help them get back on their feet.
$513 million of this settlement will be dispersed by your office.
613.
I'm sorry.
100 million. Yeah.
Editorial boards have expressed some apprehensions about your office distributing such a large amount of money. How would you allay those concerns?
Well, you can look at what we did with the money from the mortgage servicing settlement. We got some money from that settlement last year, and we've distributed all of it through, the extent it's gone out, through an open RFP process. First thing we did was set up a network of legal services and housing counselors, because when I took office, 300 some odd thousand New York families were facing foreclosure, and I found out that half of them never had a chance to talk to a lawyer at any stage of the process, and that's just wrong. So now we've got over 90 agencies that we finance through an open request for proposal process, and we publish reports on it, that are providing services. So New Yorkers are getting better deals from the banks than in most other states, because if you go in with a lawyer, you're just going to do better. So we're going to expand that program, again, through an open RFP process. We'll report on how the funds are dispersed. Same thing with land banks, an open process. Local governments applied for funding, full reporting on how they get it, and any other program that we operate. The parameters are not that open. This is money to help people who were victims of the crash of the housing market, help homeowners, help provide relief for people hurt by the mortgage-backed securities bubble and crash. So we're going to stick with that area, and everything's going to be done through an open RFP process and reported on.
Is your office in effect shaping policy by distributing such a large amount of money and allocating it to things like land banks?
Well, I think what we're doing is carrying out the language of the settlement, which requires that the money all be spent to help the people who are hurt by the collapse of the housing market. So the individuals who are hurt, we want to keep them in their homes. When you can prevent a foreclosure, it has tremendous benefits, not just for that family, but foreclosures, kids get pulled out of school, people lose their jobs, it destabilizes a neighborhood. Every time you can prevent a foreclosure, it's a good thing for the community, it's a good thing for people beyond just that family. So what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that the intent of the settlement is carried out, and that the idea here is that the banks that created this problem are now going to be providing help for the people who are hurt by the problem they created.
Thank you so much for joining us, Attorney General Schneiderman. I hope that we can come back after the Moreland Commission releases its preliminary report in December.
Thank you, Morgan.